Hello and welcome to my TryHackMe experience, getting into some ethical hacking. Our first vulnerability report, when we went into our first room, was an introduction to pen testing. We were to differentiate between white hat, black hat, and gray hat hackers, and how to set the rules of engagement, or ROE. Our vulnerability report, our introduction to pen testing. I was hired by a client company, Acme, to assess how secure their network was. This is a great example of white hat hacking. The first step is to gather all information posted publicly by the employees and use this information to collect intel. This employee has public profiles established and has included a variety of identity information, such as her email address. It appears this employee also uses her work laptop at home. The next step is a prerequisite of exploitation, which is enumeration and scanning. Here, detailed information was gathered through scanning the target's web server IP vulnerabilities. From one of the posts the employee made on a blog, I was able to find the Acme company's web server IP. I used the information gathered during enumeration and scanning to identify and exploit vulnerabilities in Acme's website. Specifically, I utilized the Metasploit framework to run an exploit that targeted the identified vulnerability on the web server's IP address listed. The exploit involved started a reverse TCP handler and sending a payload to the target, which successfully opened a meta interpreter session, allowing me to gain unauthorized access to the target system. This process demonstrated how the vulnerability could be leveraged to ethically hack into Acme's website. In the final pen test report to the Acme company, I would include the results of the testing along with the mitigation strategies for some mitigating vulnerabilities in the future. Some of the strategies I would recommend would include apply patches and ensure software is up to date, implement strong access controls, perform regular vulnerability scanning and penetration testing, use a web application firewall to help protect from common web-based attacks. The notes from pen testing involve the next room was web application and security to learn common attacks against web applications, identification, authentication failure, broken access control, and cryptographic failures. Understanding insecure direct object references, or IDOR. An inventory management system that ships tires has been attacked by malicious actors to sabotage logistics. The online attackers used one of the employees' accounts to mix up the orders. I was hired to find the compromised account and to return the shipments back to their original orders. The first step taken was to open the provided URL and access the employee's accounts, noting each employee has a user ID parameter. Each account was reviewed for suspicious activity, each time targeting different user ID numbers. I discovered the employee number 9 was the one attacked. Once I identified an IDOR, or again, insecure direct object reference, a vulnerability through the manipulation of the user ID parameter, I reverted any harmful modifications by the attacker to restore the system to its proper state. A follow-up report was supplied to the client. The web application security notes and fail. The next room was for Vulnerabilities 101, the understanding of the flaws of an application and apply researching skills on vulnerability databases. In this scenario, I am a junior penetration tester and will be shadowing a senior penetration tester. The senior penetration tester has managed to find a vulnerability in a web application that a client uses. The client is known as TryHackMe IT Service. Shown is an email from the client and a reminder that there is only one IP address they want me to test, which they provided. Step 1, information gathering. The senior penetration tester has used a public service that compiles details about the target company. Step 2, enumeration and scanning. I entered the provided IP address and used mmap to scan the target system, identifying opening ports and running services. The scan shows that mmap identified 3 open ports on the target IP address, which are typically associated with SSH, HTTP, and HTTPS services. This information would be used in the enumeration phase to determine potential entry points for further testing or exploitation. Next would be application testing. I visited the target in their web browser and was greeted with a login page. Testing of random passwords did not work. Further vulnerability research. Recalling that the portal version was 1.5.2, a search was done in the vulnerability bank, which is a database of vulnerabilities and exploits of applications. The vulnerability bank listed one vulnerability for that application and version: remote code execution. This allows commands to be executed on the target's system. Next, we did some exploitation. I was able to accumulate the information from the previous stages and use the exploit downloaded from the vulnerability bank. The remote code execution, or RCE, vulnerability allowed for the attacker to execute arbitrary code on the company's system remotely. By launching a reverse shell, I was able to gain remote access to Acme's system, allowing for me to control it and search for valuable files, passwords, backups, and other sensitive data. Following completion of the search, I was able to compile a summary of the findings and various recommendations for mitigating online attacks. The Vulnerabilities 101 notes. The next room was OWASP Broken Access Control. Exploitation Broken Access Control, number 1 of the top 10 security risks. I deployed attack box after obtaining the machine's generated IP address. I created an account with the vulnerable app. Using a proxy tool like Burp Suite, I was able to intercept the HTTP response after the login and copy the value of the redirect link parameter. By pasting the redirect link into the browser's address bar, I was able to change the value from false to true. I was then able to redirect the dashboard PHP to admin PHP. I was able to check for admin access and save the changes, granting me admin privileges and revoking it from others. To test for vulnerability, I tested for vertical privilege escalation using the Burp Suite to capture and modify the HTTP requests, and then gaining control. These are the OWASP Broken Access Control notes. And the conclusion of what we did for our assignment.